It seems like it kind of depends on where you are and how the people there choose to look at it. At our place in Ypsilanti, we just had an inspection where we had a license to be there and showed them that, see, this brownie has 0.5 grams of usable material in it, so that's all we're counting against the weight. They were fine with that, but obviously not everybody is. Did you want to address that?
Sure.
And then Dennis, you got a question.
That's a smart street police.
Well, there's a in Macomb County there was a judge that issued an opinion that basically said that the 2.5 ounces includes any mixture of preparation therein, which is the language in the actual Michigan Medical Marijuana Act, and they determined that to include literally the brownie mix, the cake mix, anything you put into it. So obviously that speaks to a somewhat poorly thought out, I think, part of the act to begin with. But it also goes to another thing, and it used to be in drug law that if you stepped on a kilo of cocaine to make 3 kilos of cocaine, now you had 3 kilos instead of 1. And if you're caught with 3, you're caught with 3, irrespective of the fact that that 3 was stepped on and it's not as pure as the one that you started with, and that's still the same, largely speaking, the same amount of cocaine molecules, over the course of the 3. The same is true. The courts are they're importing that concept with, recreational drug law that they apply in marijuana and cocaine and meth cases, where there is stepping on and there's a process where street level potency is much different. And they're applying it, I think, just not honestly. I mean, there's not an intellectual honesty to the courts when they try to basically screw us through every possible or misinterpretation of where a comma is, or how any mixture of preparation therein really, what that really means. Because obviously cake mix isn't psychoactive. It's not going to hurt anybody. Having 2.5 ounces of it with 1 or 2 grams of marijuana in it is not going to. It's not. It shouldn't make you guilty of a crime. So.
Are they treating oil and hashish any different than the edibles, though, because of being a reduction?
I would say that if you're in Macomb County and you're in front of that judge would probably rule the same way on those issues. When you say if they're treating it differently, I mean, this is one judge. I mean, I practice largely in West Michigan, and I have not, for instance, had any problems in West Michigan with people getting caught with 1 brownie or 2 brownies or a tray of brownies and having that issue. So this is where basically you cross county lines and stuff starts to matter at this point. In the back, go ahead.
Some of the folks here know me, some don't. My name is Dennis Alexander. I own Magic Gum and Gourmet Medibles. I also own a couple of catering businesses as well. I work with Third Coast frequently on their foods and goods, actually daily. I buy all their goods. Medibles are kind of a quagmire, guys. They're really respective to the particular city or municipality that you're in. Understand that hashish, hash oil, extractions thereof are federally scheduled. There are specific guidelines relative to the possession of hash oil, hash, and extractions that are considered to be condensed form of marijuana. On our state guideline, and Rick, Mr. Abel, Mr. Levine might be able to enlighten us a little bit, as well as Mr. Targowski. It's a very gray area. And unfortunately, in the state of Michigan, our legal system slithers within gray areas. And I mean, literally, our politicians and the bureaucracy out there are using those gray areas against us. Fortunately, there is some safe harbors in the state. There's a few locations where the actual medical weight that's posted on the labeling of the goods is being respected, specifically Ypsilanti, which I can quote relative to current codes that we have that we work within in the city. Just understand this. If you purchase medicals and they are labeled and you are traveling within the state, remove those labels so that they appear to be just food. Don't offer That is going to save you a lot of trouble. It's unfortunate with the law that we have in place that we have to deal with it in that fashion, but that's where we're at right now. Don't think under the guises of your card that you're going to be protected, because currently the political system that we're working within and the bureaucracy is not going to allow that to happen, because there is a war. And whether you want to believe it or not, on every level of government, there is a war going on here against what we're doing. And one of the reasons that I sat up and spoke today is because I'd like to give folks a little bit of a guideline on Mr. Schuette. And I think it's something that a lot of people came here for was information. And a lot of people don't understand the position that Mr. Schuette is operating from. You really need to know this. It's very important. First and foremost, he's one of the biggest bureaucrats in the state on multiple levels. One of the levels is that Mr. Schuette is also a sole heir of a very large corporation in the state, probably one of the biggest corporations in the state. And that corporation also owns numerous, or has interest in numerous pharmaceutical companies. So his interests in this state are on multiple levels, not just from the bureaucratic position, but as well from a personal position. Some of the people may argue that point with me, but frankly, there's more than one interest he has in medical marijuana. And it's not just solely standing on the backs of patients to do that. He's trying to wave a flag right now with the Mitt Romney campaign, and the best position he's been able to put is medical marijuana, because it's something he thinks he can win. And he's using the Republican Party to do so. Okay? It gives him a great flag to wave and a great feather in his cap so he can get Mitt Romney's attention. He very much would like to climb the political ladder.
Nixon thought he could win this too.
Exactly. It's a really tough thing. Medibles are a very tough situation, guys.
One other thing I wanted to just check in. Thank you, Dennis. One other thing I wanted to just touch on is, as John was kind of mentioning, it really does depend on what county you're in, and I think it's really important that we're all educating our prosecutors. I know in Lansing and Ingham County, a group of us caregivers met with our prosecutor back in 2009, right when the law was fresh, and we laid out every single issue right before. I mean, spent hours with the man, and he's been really good as far as the willingness to take the time to talk with us, and I think it's just super important that everybody in their county is saying, you know, look, we've got a situation where this, giving actual examples, this patient has cancer and maybe they have a feeding tube, so they need to be able to use the oil through the feeding tube, you know, giving them different scenarios so that they can understand the need for medibles and the need for the hash oil. And if you take the time to do that with your prosecutors, that will avoid the charges to begin with most often. So I feel in my county very comfortable with medibles. I feel comfortable with the oils because I know that our prosecutor understands the need for them. In the next county over, you know, there's a prosecutor that, you know, is a little bit different, and, you know, I wouldn't feel so comfortable driving through that county. So.
Could somebody please address and or discuss alcohol extractions, medibles, and the ATF, please? You understand what I'm saying? How the ATF may be getting involved with alcohol extraction medibles, because it's food with alcohol in it.
Yeah, that's one thing. I know that there were some concerns in Ann Arbor a while back of compassion centers distributing tincture that was made with Everclear, and the concern is that they for one, may not have an alcohol license to sell Everclear, the actual alcohol, and also that it appears maybe they weren't carding to make sure they were 21. So that's something that you can actually use glycerin, and I'm not sure how that works with a caregiver to their own patient, since they're not actually selling the product. That's something we should probably look more into. It seems like a caregiver would be able to maybe transfer it without selling it, but I think you'd have to be really careful to make sure that it's not going to a minor.
I'm just concerned that you might have an issue with the ATF at some point, especially if you're a caregiver making alcohol extractions. They may have an issue with you.
Right.
That may give them an into your door.
Well, remember that the Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms is a federal agency, and you're looking at local or statewide ordinances that restrict liquor sales. So some of those things may be a local issue as opposed to an ATF issue, but an issue nonetheless.
Thank you.
John or any lawyer want to answer any of those questions? Okay, pretty good.
Non-lawyer wants to take
Okay, Brandy.
This non-lawyer says that it's a cottage industry, so if you're just making it for yourself and your patient, I don't really fear the federal government, personally, over this issue. If you're talking about commercial level, we don't really have a regulated commercial system yet, so maybe we're not quite there yet.
That's true.
I have some experience with the DEA and with the United States Attorney in the Western District of Michigan in regard to their ongoing investigations into medical marijuana, or what they call just, marijuana, the industry. And, tinctures and alcohol really isn't on their radar. I mean, they're really looking at people that are operating on multiple layers. They were people that open up grocery stores and compassion centers and dispensaries, sell the right to patients, sell grow equipment, buy your materials off of you, and open up multiple locations, and basically end up, through the end of it, dealing with gigantic quantities of product and large sums of cash. That's really what they're interested in. So, yes, potentially the ATF could be interested, but my feeling is they're interested in, that might be one of 10 reasons why they're interested in you, not the only reason. The other reasons would be that you're moving money through bank accounts, through different states, through offshore, or you're just dealing in quantities that make this not really a legitimate issue, even in state law. So,
any other questions on these issues? Okay, let's talk about the ballot initiative situation, and some people have alluded to it, and Tom talked about it a little bit in a little bit of detail too. Basically, Brandy mentioned the national poll that said that for legalization we've reached 50% nationally. We've had some other local polls done in state here that demonstrate large support for medical marijuana and for decrim as well. A couple of schools of thought are, Steve alluded, that, and Tom, that we're on this pendulum swing, that in 2012 there's going to be a lot of turnout. We just started off by hearing about this national poll, and maybe even though the support looks stronger in state polls for decrim or medical marijuana, that there could be an opportunity here to go all the way and maybe do a legalization effort, or perhaps we go with the more of the solid support, or the broad support, let's say, for decrim or medical marijuana, and allow a state out west to go first and let the dominoes fall and get it 2016 or something like that. That's kind of what the discussion has been about. So I want to just briefly go through the panel here and say, should we try this? And then what should we try? And if you just answer that, then we get into a discussion with the audience and add to it a little bit. So starting with Tom and coming all the way down, should we have a ballot initiative this year? And what direction should we lean in?
Yeah, I think we should have a ballot initiative. I think that we, it's, there's a side of me that wants straight up legalization, but if we do end up, compromising, I really think the possession of 12 plants, it's already in the Michigan Medical Marijuana Act. But this would be tracking how it's been used for a while. Now, there's a side of me that wants to discuss these important areas as well as what about protecting the youth? What about the driving issue? What about the employment issue? What about tenants' rights? To the extent we could slip one or two of these that are found to be important in there, I think it would be worthwhile to at least enter it into our discussions as we go through this dialectical exercise. These are some of the issues I see as being important. I think the truth is on our side. I think that they're going to come back with protect the children. I think we can come back with protect the children. Mm-hmm. Now, with our PR and communication scheme, if we show a raid going down with children being subjected to that, and then what's happened to their parents afterwards, and the economic ruination and seizure of the kid's laptop, or, you know, I mean, that shit goes down. So we can come back with a, you know, now who's really doing the harm here? How are we really protecting patients by following this policy? Let's protect patients with an initiative to be sure this stops, you know. So I also think it's dishonest to tell our kids that it's in the same category as heroin. Then they try cannabis, they say, oh, they were lying about this, why not try heroin? We're protecting the kids. We're protecting them.
Down the road, and then we'll come back to some of these details, but that's good stuff, so we'll come back to Tom on some of the details, especially when we get some questions from people out here, too. Tim?
Okay, well, I don't represent any organized cannabis interest group or anything like that outside of the Coalition for a Safer Detroit. That being said, I am deeply skeptical of doing any form of ballot initiative. I personally will not be participating in any such activity. And I say that specifically because I do not believe that the community has the ability to get the signatures unless you can find somewhere about $1 million, all right? I've been working on a lot of ballot initiative campaigns. Big problem you got, you're going to have to run a winter campaign. Those signatures are going to have to be in by about May, okay? Now, the common way of getting signatures, going to all these festivals and concerts and these outdoor things and where you reach a lot of people. Now, again, I'm going to kind of bite my tongue because there may be somebody who's invented a different wheel here, and that is if there are some very, very tech-savvy people that can use Facebook and Twitter and whatever, on and on. I'm not an expert in that stuff, all right? And you can somehow come up with some means of circumventing the typical way of getting signatures. It's a waste of time. And that's it. That's my opinion. Sorry, folks, but I'm deeply skeptical. So that's all I have to say.
All right, the question before us is, do we support a ballot option coming up in 2012, and if so, what would it look like? Ideally, I think that we do have a ballot initiative opportunity in 2012. 2012 represents a unique window in time for us. Our particular community may have a difficult time organizing people to get out to the polls, but the Democrats don't. And 2012 is an opportunity to re-elect Obama. They're facing some very serious challenges, and they will get the vote out. There's a school of thought amongst the community that anything that says marijuana on it will get an automatic stamp of approval by the voters when they step into the ballot box. I don't necessarily agree with that. I believe that how you dress that particular initiative is going to have a lot to do with whether it's supported by the media or whether it's supported by the majority of folks that are not cannabis users. My suggestion for a ballot initiative would not be a full legalization issue because I don't feel it's supported by the majority of the constituents in the state. My suggestion would be for either a rescheduling issue. I think most people can believe that marijuana doesn't belong on Schedule 1. It could be more appropriate as a Schedule 4, possibly as a Schedule 3 if we had to. But there's a possibility that the citizens of Michigan would accept a decriminalization issue where we could change it from a criminal penalty to a civil penalty across the state. This doesn't necessarily empower large-scale growers. It doesn't necessarily empower businesses. But what it does do is provide protections for the patients and the caregivers that are already existent in Michigan under our medical marijuana law and the remainder of folks that use it without approval from their physician. Protecting them from criminal charges. It would simply be a ticket or something along those lines, with the exception of extremely large volumes. So that, to me, is a more successful.
We're running out of battery power here, so we're going to take a break. We're going to recharge the battery and come back.
Think that a 2012
It's the Medical Marijuana Radio Network. I'm Steve Greene. We're in Flint, Michigan, broadcasting live.
I tend to agree with Rick on the idea of some sort of a decriminalization initiative.